This is a Liberty Crack News and Special Information Report.
Hey guys, welcome to our first chaotic South Carolina legislative update of the year for Liberty Crack Media. Tonight we will attempt to explain what the South Carolina General Assembly did with 270 bills, 1,400 resolutions, and every remaining hour I had over the past 6 months. So I'm Chair of Legislative Affairs for the state for now. And I've spent the last
how you put in for now.
For now. How this last 6 months went, I don't know if I want to do that again. But I've been building deterministic probability models and scoring models and trying to track legislation, usually the night before our monthly meetings. And somehow decided the responsible next step was to rank every single bill they passed this year before this podcast, which didn't go great. It somehow, in trying to audit the administrative state, I created an even larger administrative state of spreadsheets and scoring categories, and I sent some unhinged group chat lists to my unsuspecting guests on the show tonight. So, and in the process, I also maxed out ChatGPT 3 times, which was a first for me. And it essentially, my usage limits. It essentially ended with it telling me to stop sending it all these shitty South Carolina bills I've been doing for the past 6 months.
You finally gave AI a stomach ache.
These bills this year, it was the final straw. But tonight, going through all the wreckage, I have 3 guests, including a brand new Liberty Crack Media guest. So we have Will Dettmering, aka the Lurch of Liberty.
Hello.
We have we have the Minnesota Maniac, Stone Cold Steve Hoffmann.
Don't mess with my gummies.
And we have the chair of the Libertarian Party of Colleton County in South Carolina, and also someone who's been helping me over the past few months with all of this, Joe Jernigan.
Howdy, rebels.
So this monkey barrel will somehow attempt to go through. I think I sent about 5 different lists out to everyone. So I don't know how we want to start this. I will say the funnest part of this is Joe had, as we were going through these monthly meetings, Joe had this really cool idea of when we started to notice, I think it was 85% of the bills are ceremonial resolutions, which seems like a massive waste of time and energy and taxpayer money. But before the show, I went through AI once it finally kicked back on after tens of thousands of pages of South Carolina bills and tried to draft a couple out. But I thought we'd just start with that. That's the only positive part of this last 6 months. Everything else has been a total mess, but I wanted to throw it to Joe for a minute since he's the first time on Liberty Crack Media, and just kind of maybe go into that and how he's been involved with legislative issues in South Carolina over the years, or anything else.
Hey y'all, I've just been interested in government for a long time in my life. When I got involved with the Libertarian Party of South Carolina, I knew I wanted to actually get my feet wet and see if there's stuff that I could figure out, maybe talk to other people about, work with them, to try to change it. And legislation is something that we could really focus on. Anybody has an ability to focus on it. and it's something that we can do something about in terms of something tangible. Like our legislators represent us. We can call them. We can literally show up to their office, and if they happen to be in there, we can talk to them about it. Speaking on this thing about resolutions, I don't know. It's just when I think about what government should be doing, it's not, ceremonial naming of roads or, congratulations to sports teams for their wins or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think the practice needs to be banned in total, or have a direct limit put on it. Because we can't just have legislatures that literally go into office and over, as Randy was saying, over 80% of the time, I believe, because it was like 80% of, things that were passed or introduced or whatever. But they can't be spending all that time on ceremonial congratulations and naming things. We need them to be passing legislation that actually tangibly improves all the lives of South Carolinians. I would rather them be voting on tax reform. I would rather them be voting on budget cuts and audits. I would rather them be voting on almost anything else other than a ceremonial resolution. So I personally think they should be banned. I don't know how we would go about doing that, or the legislature would go about doing that, but it would just be worth researching how impactful these resolutions really are. And if they don't have a big impact on the lives of South Carolinians, then let's just get rid of them. Let's stop doing it. Let's stop wasting time for the however many months they're in session.
Have you thought of any titles? I was thinking the Get Back to Work Act, or maybe the Actual Legislation Act, or maybe something a little sassier.
I have not put thought into the name, but I like the Get Back to Work Act. I like the sound of that. Because maybe going to work and congratulating some people is considered work, but I don't know. That doesn't sound like work to me.
Doesn't sound like real work. I wanted to lay a little groundwork before we get into the weeds of this. So, the Cato Institute ranks freedom in the 50 states, and they rank New Hampshire number 1, Florida's number 2, South Dakota's number 3, and South Carolina is number 29. And the Tax Foundation also ranks all 50 states, and they also rank South Carolina as the 29th freest state. And when you dig into the Cato list, it puts South Carolina in the bottom 5 for personal freedom, drug arrest, asset forfeiture, cannabis, gambling, among a bunch of other things. So as we go through these are essentially all bad bills. It's a long, long list, and this would be 10 more podcasts if we went into all the introduced bills, which I believe there were about 4,000 that didn't make it through the both chambers. But just to give a bird's eye view, things are a little hairy in South Carolina, and it's a pretty titanic effort, and that's why I wanted to mention Jorgensen's bill right at the beginning, because that would be super fun, and it would send a message just introducing it. And Steve Hoffmann knows a few people in the House Freedom Caucus and some other people that would be a major achievement for the Libertarian Party to get an actual statutory bill introduced, because that wouldn't be a ceremonial resolution. That would be an actual change to the SC code, whether it passed or not. But I wanted to just lay a little groundwork. So the number one issue we dealt with this year as a third party. Yeah, I know there's some commenting. Will might have to edit this part. Are you getting echo?
I'm not getting echo.
Okay.
I do when I speak, but not when I listen to you.
Yeah, it's when someone else speaks and it bleeds through your microphone, Randy. But I was complimenting you for doing what you're doing, which is muting your microphone when other people speak. And also, I mentioned that we didn't have that issue Friday, so I'm sorry. I don't know why we've got it today.
Well, we're doing the first test runs with these mobile podcasts. Yeah, I think Will's coming back early August for things to get back into full monkey business. But I'll make sure to mute it as everyone else is speaking. We're at 9:58, so if that's a marker for editing it. But
If I may chip in here.
Mhm.
In June, I did a conversation with the Hoff podcast where I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly things that came out of the South Carolina legislative session. And one of those was, two of them, we had the state budget, which is, indicative of the tax and spend representatives we have. And the other one was the fact that our Republican and Democrat Party representatives don't like competition. So the filing fee bill is really should be unconstitutional. It keeps independents and third parties from really getting anybody in the General Assembly. What do you think of those ideas, Randy?
Yeah, so that was definitely the worst bill of the year. So we have something like 11 or more candidates running, including Bill Reside, who's in Joe's district, who's an amazing, amazing candidate. But what they ended up doing is they introduced the candidate filing bill last year. And that's one of the sneaky tricks they do. And when you try to track this, you see the little tactics they do to sneak these things through. They introduce it and move it a little into one chamber and then let it go into the next session. And they started secretly moving it in these little jerking steps every like 3 or 4 weeks. And what this bill does is third parties like the Libertarian Party we're associated with, or the Green Party, who we were also in contact on this issue because it affects us both the same way. We don't have primaries. And the two major parties, they pay similar fees, but they also have a different electoral process of picking candidates and nominating them and electing them and everything. So they pay these fees. And how the wording was in the statute of this candidate filing bill, which is H3557, which ended up passing at the last minute. What they do is they worded it that it's some sort of loophole. And that's why they're just trying to get rid of this loophole where these third parties can essentially run for free, and all these major parties have to pay for it. But the major parties pay for it to fund their primaries. It's apples and oranges, completely different system. And we have a Senate candidate, Casey Whitener. So what they do is they take the percentage of what your theoretical income would be. I think it's 1%. And they make you pay that as a filing fee. Well, if you're going to run for the Senate, it's over $10,000. So if someone wants to run in the Green Party or someone wants to run in the Libertarian Party, and even if they just want to run for educational purposes and getting the ideas of liberty out there or whatever, they have to pay $10,000 to run for some of these federal office positions. And even some of the state house positions, they end up having to pay $1,000 or $500 or whatever. And it really stifles any competition from third parties. It makes it impossible to run. Some of these candidates that have some money and have some donors, they could probably get around it. Probably Bill Reside and Casey Whitener could have ran, but Casey Whitener's only raised about enough money to cover the filing fee at this point. So it's going to catastrophically affect third parties. I know there's a couple groups threatening lawsuits and maybe filing them soon. This is complete discrimination. It's the two major parties, and obviously this is a red state, and it's the Republican Party trying to throw every wrench possible to stop any competition from third parties or any headaches from third parties. We have 1,000 horror stories of this. It happens in all of the different states in its own way. But this is definitely, for us specifically, being involved in a third party, this was the big nightmare bill of the year.
we might have a
Yeah, and they also don't
opportunity
like
put it
credit. Oh, go ahead.
into we might have an opportunity to have a two-prong um, way of, one, seeing if we can repeal the bill that they've put through. Secondly, to offer another bill where the primary parties or all party participants have to pay out of their own pocket and cannot have an organization, party, or affiliate pay for their filing fees.
Yeah. Well, what were you going to say, Steve?
The legislature also does not like criticism. In the past, they've also introduced bills where if you're an organization with so many employees and you publish articles or posts that criticize the legislature, you have to file as a lobbyist. That takes a lot of money and a lot of paperwork. So the Palmetto State Watch has run up against that a couple times because they're very critical of what's going on in Colombia. But luckily, those particular bills at the last minute never made it to the governor's officer for signature. But yeah, they don't like competition, and they don't like people ridiculing what they're doing up there in Colombia.
Yeah, 100%. I know next year, so we have 11 or so candidates, we might end up with 0 in the next election cycle, or maybe 1 or 2 candidates. I know Bill Reside, who I'm a huge fan of, and we've done promo videos with, and he's in Jones County. And he's probably going to get a massive percentage, and he could even get a plurality and win. He might be able to do it next time. And some of these people who come with more money and they can donate to their own campaign and stuff like that. But this really takes a massive wing of the party out of commission. Joe, has anyone talked about any of this, like Bill specifically, or anything in Colleton County, or anything you've observed about this whole candidate filing thing?
No, I haven't
Also,
spoken.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I haven't spoken to anybody in Colleton County personally about this specific legislation, but I just, like you were saying earlier, I know it's going to affect us greatly because, a lot of third-party candidates, they don't have like the monetary support that the big two parties have. Like, the Democrat and Republican parties have, been in big business for, a majority of American history at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like, they have big pockets and deep pockets that they can use to get their candidates started and help them. And with third parties, naturally they're a little bit smaller. And, we don't exactly always have the resources. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But third parties don't always have the resources that the two big parties have. So this candidate filing bill, which greatly increased the filing fees, is going to hurt third parties the most, which includes us. So it really feels like a locking out measure, a way to kind of storm the castle and then close the walls. But we work with what we have until we have people in office that can vote in our way or do vote our way.
Yeah, it's interesting. David Nolan, who founded the Libertarian Party, he considered its primary purpose as an educational vehicle. And when candidates can run, they can get the message of liberty out. And that is a huge philosophical position of a lot of candidates. And we've had Larry Sharp on Steve Hoffman's show. He has to go through titanic efforts every year to get ballot access. He has to sue over it. And the two parties just totally throw every speed bump and wrench possible at you. And of course, the Republican Party wouldn't be above this, because when you have people like the House Freedom Caucus, they won't put them on any committees. They gatekeep as much as humanly possible. They try to limit their bills. They try to restrict them in any way they can conceivably do it legally. And of course, a third party they'd go scorched earth on. But this was such an obvious sabotage attempt, and they're trying to bottleneck any competition, and they got away with it for now. But hopefully some of these lawsuits can kind of counteract that. But out of all the bills, that's definitely one that really hurt the Libertarian Party this year, no question.
Let me tell you how bad it is. 2 sessions ago, members of the House Freedom Caucus, they had a big fight with the Republican caucus. And where all the action was occurring in these meeting rooms, the Republican caucus would not let the Freedom Caucus members in the room. So the Freedom Caucus people were standing outside the door trying to listen to what's going on so that they would be ready for the next session. That's how bad it is. They not only don't like competition from third parties, they don't like competitions from liberty-minded people in their own party.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and moving on from this, in line with how Cato and the Tax Foundation rate South Carolina, we had a lot of paternalistic, micromanaging, moralizing bills this year. So this state still has no legal sports betting. North Carolina and Tennessee do. They were not even going to theoretically allow any county in the state to have a casino. There was a lot of the early part of the session and during the pre-filing period, there were a lot of big fights about that. But there were multiple nicotine regulation bills attacking the vape and hemp industry, all sorts of social media restriction bills. This state is so bad on this. This is why we're one of the 5 worst states when it comes to personal freedom. But one big bill they passed was a S287. It's an electronic nicotine delivery system regulation. It creates this huge regulatory expansion from the manufacturer, how they register. It creates licensing restrictions, which is another nasty tendency in South Carolina, getting very draconian licensing restrictions. They put in new advertising restrictions, product directories, new inspections, allowing them broader power to seize property, increase civil penalties, and increase criminal enforcement over vapes. I know with this online one, it's hard to switch between the people than when we do it in person. But were there any bills that stood out on the moralizing end of it to any of you guys during the last 5 months?
Well, I could have been able to buy my ivermectin over the counter, except one of the Republicans got ticked off at one of the members of the Freedom Caucus, and at the last minute, he had it go back to the committee rather than having it vote on the floor of the House. So all of us residents of South Carolina can blame a Republican in the South Carolina legislature for not being able to go to a drugstore and buy your ivermectin pills. And by the way, there's a parasite going on right now that's affecting all kind of Americans. And if you could go buy ivermectin and fenbendazole, that's a parasite killer. You wouldn't have to worry about that thing that's spreading around right now. But thanks to the Republicans in our state legislature, not in South Carolina. Just grin and bear it. Go ahead.
There was a Taco Bell parasite spreading from Michigan, so it could be here soon.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in on that, Mr. Hoffman, I heard about that as well, and from my understanding, it looks like it mainly was over just some beef between a more establishment Republican in the legislature and one of the Freedom Caucus members. What I'm not sure of, and I don't know if you know this, but the Republican in the legislature who basically had the bill, you said they had it go back to committee, right?
Yes.
Okay, so was he like the speaker, or was he one of the higher leadership ranking members in the legislature? Okay, so basically my point is,
do you know?
If that my basic point was only that if it's how it is basically on the federal level, where like the speaker and these people who are in leadership roles within the legislature can unilaterally send bills back to committee and things like that. I've had an issue with that for a long time. Especially at the federal level. Again, I don't know if it's the same way at the South Carolina level, but that should not be a thing. If something is going to come to the floor or disappear from the floor or go back to committee, those things should be voted on. And that's a big reason why good legislation, at many state levels and the federal level do not get passed, is because leadership feels one way and, other people in the legislature feel a different way. And because the people in leadership are in those leadership roles, they can literally decide what is even debated or not. And that's not in the spirit of the true spirit of a legislature that debates and tries to get to, the heart of solutions and pass the legislation.
Yeah, I think it was Davy Hyatt from Pickens County was the one who shelved it. And was that Jordan Pace who introduced that one, the ivermectin bill?
Yeah, I believe it was Jordan Pace. And the Jordan Pace is the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. And the powerful Republican chairpersons in the legislature, they don't like Jordan Pace because he makes waves. Basically, he's fighting for limited government, individual and economic freedom, and the Republicans just don't understand that terminology.
That is another comparing the different states. When we had Jeremy Kaufman on, we were talking about New Hampshire and like the Cato rankings in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's kind of a purple state, and they have free staters and Liberty Republicans, or like half of their state house, and they have way more leverage. But in these super majority Republican states, they have such a monopoly that you see infighting, you see them trying to, well, even who's probably going to end up being our governor, Alan Wilson. He was the attorney general, and he did the Operation Ganja and seized millions of dollars in property, arrested someone who had spoken at the our libertarian meetings. Ken Shimer basically ran him out of business, put an ankle bracelet on him. He got his bank accounts closed, all of these theatrics. These supermajority states get real nasty. I think Will's mentioned Louisiana is another state that's kind of like that, where they have so much leverage that they cannibalize their own party, like what they did to Jordan Pace, and then they go scorched earth on any other competition, like a third party, like the Libertarian Party.
Plus, the reason that these other organizations have given us such a low freedom index is what our legislature does the best is grow the size and scope of the South Carolina government.
Rhinos.
The budget bill. Randy, you should be talking about the budget bill, which is horrific on how much money, what an increase in spending they passed this year. The spending increase was way beyond the population increase, way beyond what you would add for inflation. It's just grow the government, because you citizens can't control your own lives, so you need more government, more unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats to make your life decisions for us. We are so lucky.
Well, as Steve says, we have more rhino, the most rhinos this side of Africa in South Carolina. And I think Jonathan Hill was on Steve Hoffman's show when he was saying, don't we have a balanced budget, like amendment in the South Carolina Constitution?
There is no balanced budget. There is not even spending caps. They did away with that in the last budget. They can just continue to spend. And more they spend, well, guess what? One day, somebody has to pay for all that spending. And the person who's going to pay for it is you and I, an average Joe taxpayer. We're going to be stuck with a huge tax increase. And South Carolina will not just be a purple state. It'll be a bankrupt state, basically. We're very fortunate.
Do you know the numbers offhand, like how much the actual budget? I see they're there were $445 million in proposed earmarks and teacher salary increases, etc. But do you know how much the percentages were for this year?
Steve, he's asking you.
I could look them up. That's one benefit.
We're not even getting
doing these online.
we're not even getting. Yeah, I was going to say. I don't even see a line across. I don't even see a line across Steve's thing.
Might be a...
We're getting $41.6 billion in total spending. And that's a historic high for South Carolina.
See, that's why South Dakota, when the Free Staters were picking which state, they had South Dakota and I think Montana or something. South Carolina always has this issue. And it does seem like Will always mentions the Dixiecrat element of South Carolina, where a lot of people, including Dick Elliott, wasn't his dad, the guy who owns Elliott Realty, his dad was like a big deal Democrat in the South Carolina State House forever, and then he switched Republican.
Oh, yeah.
It's also hard to be a free state when $14 billion of that comes from the federal government subsidies. And Tripp knows what happens when you accept federal government money.
Oh, amen.
Yeah, speaking of the state spending, if I could just bring it up, I want to bring up the Department of Transportation Restructuring Act that you had informed us of. And I knew a little bit about it, but I hadn't refreshed myself on it. It's part of the same exact thing that all rhinos do. They say that they're for a limited government, decision making to be closer to you, blah blah blah, and then they literally do the exact opposite. And this bill is one of many examples of that. So it basically consolidates authority under a single gubernatorial appointee. You know, somebody that the governor appoints, whoever the governor will be. It's probably going to be Mr. Wilson. Let's just be real. And it expands executive control over transportation policy, administrative discretion over procurement and infrastructure. That's literally the exact opposite way to spend money and increase accountability. Or decrease spending and increase accountability. That will increase spending and decrease accountability. It literally does not make economics, and this is one of the biggest reasons why I became a libertarian, all the way back in middle school, is because in our modern world, nothing works without money. Everything happens because of money. Everything happens with money. And money does not work as good when it is being controlled far away from you as it is when it's being controlled close to you. It's really, really that simple. It's like asking your partner or your parent, hey, can you buy me my favorite color shirt? And they'd be like, oh, so what's the percentage of the chance that they're going to get it right? Probably pretty high. Now go ask somebody in California, hey, can you buy me my favorite color shirt? Wait a minute, I don't know you. I've never been around you. I don't know your issues. I don't know the things that would actually directly help you. So they are trying to consolidate power in the transportation department at the state level when they should be decentralizing the funding for transportation. And this was one of my proposals whenever I was running for office against Mr. Wendell Gilliard at the State House, District 111. And I saw the Freedom Caucus put out this idea as well in one of their legislative updates or something like that, which I thought was kind of curious, but nevertheless. And it suggested that we just take the motor fuel fees, the state motor fuel fees that the state already takes and gives a percentage of to the county transportation committees and just increase the portion of those motor fuel fees that go to county transportation committees. And that is the way that you help transportation problems, or really any problems, is you put the power and the decision making closer to the people that it affects. So this is just again another example of Republicans saying they're for limited government, they're for accountability, blah blah blah. Well, no, you're not, and you prove it literally every single session in every single state, every single time. So yeah, this bill is a bad bill for sure.
Well, and I think when Jordan Pace was on Hoffman's show, he's mentioning something like 40,000 miles of road is owned by the government in South Carolina out of like 60,000 in the state. And it's like the opposite in Florida, which is way, way larger and has a way better regulatory framework, way better taxes across the board, is run way more efficiently. And we have it where a vast, vast, vast majority of the roads are owned by the South Carolina government. That's what people are always complaining about. And they did the same thing. They had a huge DHEC restructuring. They had obviously the huge DOT restructuring. They put in these bills that are 10,000 pages long. And for no reason, when we could be scaling all of this back, but when people like the Freedom Caucus bring this up, then they get locked out of the room. So,
and I'm not 100% sure that this is the sole reason, but I feel like a lot of that has to do again with this. I don't want to say like a new wave because it's always been there, but that's what's happening on the federal and state levels between these Republican legislators who actually want to legislate like true, what I personally call true quote unquote conservatives, because in my opinion, a true conservative is not somebody who is, basically for the state as long as Republicans are in power and they're the ones opposing it. No, real conservatives are people who believe in the United States Constitution and who believe in preserving limited government that is decentralized and spread out.
There used to be a lot of fiscal conservatives and constitutional conservatives within the Republican Party. But unfortunately, something's changed in the last decade where those numbers have dwindled significantly. So they call themselves conservatives, but it beats me just what kind of conservative they are.
Well, it's exactly those types that are trying to gatekeep and trying to put up the walls so that people who are more fiscally conservative and liberty focused, like freedom caucuses in these different states, can make headwinds and actually maybe pass, sponsored from them, originated from them legislation. The old establishment or the vanguard of the Republican Party all across the nation is holding on as hard as they possibly can. And unfortunately, they're doing a pretty darn good job. And the role of liberty-focused Republicans, one of the roles of them, and people who are in third parties, in my opinion, is to dwindle down the establishment of all parties in all forms. Like, it is time for new ways of approaching things where everything isn't decided based on seniority or authority. It's decided based on debate and facts and what I don't want to say resolution, what conclusion people come to makes the most sense. That's what should be decided, not people who are in leadership positions literally shutting out debate, period. That is the opposite of what legislating is. Not debating is the opposite of what legislating is.
Yeah, 100%. And when they weren't busy passing 1,400 resolutions and DOT restructuring, they set their attention towards age-appropriate code design for minors, Stop Harm from Addictive Social Media Act. They had multiple internet restriction acts where they create sweeping regulatory expansion. They start putting liability on all the companies and manufacturers and whatever that deal with these different social media companies. So that age-appropriate code design for minors, age 34-31, it had statewide regulation of online platforms, mandatory age verification, algorithm restrictions, advertising limitations, privacy defaults, annual audits, and attorney general enforcement. Then the H4591 Stop Harm from Addictive Social Media Act required parental consent, mandatory platform restrictions, banned numerous platform features, create statutory damages, and significantly expanded civil enforcement. So when they do this in one state, if you went through the introduced bills this year, because there were a lot of close calls, including the Airbnb bill that could have banned Airbnb in the entire state for the hotel industry. When you do this, these businesses stop operating in the state entirely. And then you're not getting the same amount of business activity. And when they've tried to propose legalizing sports betting, which is a huge tax revenue source in our bordering states, they block all of that, but they had time to regulate drones, and they had a huge DUI reform. They had another public transportation trespass act right after the bill right before the candidate filing bill was a political party restriction bill that H 3556 that restricted ways you can protest and created all these new fines and all these new fees. And they're spending all this time and energy when we are the 29th state for the tax foundation in Cato, and we're on the bottom 5 for personal liberty. It is really a nightmare going through these bills. And if I had to go back through and go through all the bills that just barely didn't pass or ended halfway through the second chamber, there were so many problem bills. And even that Airbnb one I mentioned a minute ago, that's totally funded by these larger property management companies, including the rep who introduced it's from Murrells Inlet, and the hotel industry. And they sit there and get donations and get money and get favors from these larger industries in the state and start putting massive threats and restrictions. This is the second year in a row they've tried to push through that Airbnb bill, which creates this convoluted system where guests have to give over their private, confidential financial information from Airbnb to these random third parties that create all these liabilities for Airbnb. And just because you're licensed with the Real Estate Commission, like I am, doesn't mean this financial information that's confidential and sensitive should be changing hands over and over and over again. And it was such a liability. If it would have passed, Airbnb openly threatened last year and this year that South Carolina would be the only state they would not operate in. So the amount of drama over these bills is so crazy, and you get simple things like the ivermectin bill, and one member from Pickens shelves it in the committee, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's such a nightmare. This was really horrifying going through all of these bills this year. It was like a total circus.
Yes, I'd like to expand on that. As you know, Jonathan Hill puts out the bad bill sheet, and every week during the session, he publishes a list of bad bills. And he was able, because of his publicity and other people taking action, 29 of those bad bills were actually killed as a result of communicating the bad bill sheet. Unfortunately, 56 of those bad bills actually made it through both the House and the Senate and were signed by the governor. So this last legislative session should not be known as an exemplary tribute to limited government, individual, and economic freedom, but it should be a tribute to excessive power by tyranny by a branch of representatives who no longer represent you and I, we the people, but basically represent special interests. And they did such a good job that they gave themselves a pay raise. You all know about S933, I bet. Randy, you want to talk about that?
Well, tying in bird's eye view of that, when you had Jordan Pace on, he mentioned the lobbyist branch of the government. I think there's a bird's eye view explanation of all of this. So, what is it? The legislative branch gets to pick all of the judicial nominees in this state, so that essentially ties them to the political class in the legislative branch.
Yeah, let me expand on that. When Jonathan Hill was on my show, we talked about the South Carolina government, and basically because of the Constitution, there are really only two branches in the South Carolina government. You have the executive branch and you have the legislative branch. There really is no judicial branch because the legislature controls the judicial branch. Now, he did say, but there is a third branch of government in South Carolina, and that's the lobbying branch. They have just as much power as the other two branches of the government.
It makes sense with all of these. It's so corrupt in this state. Another bill that popped out was they decided to take time to essentially make it impossible to own a drone, which they're starting to crack down on federally too. But H 4679 created a statewide drone code enforcement establishment and created new crimes, way broader no-fly zones, because there's already no-fly zones, and once it gets to a certain height, you have to, have a certain kind of like pilot license type licensing structure they have here. But realtors and photographers and even roofers and companies that use drones all the time have to be very, very careful anyway. But they created no-fly zones that are so broad that essentially for basic business uses such as a roofer looking at the top of the roof to diagnose something, or a realtor taking a slightly elevated picture of a property, makes it where it's banned. It's not allowed. And they expanded forfeiture authority and other major restrictions on normal lawful drone use. So they have all this time to do things like this and the vape bill and social media restriction bills, but can't get rid of the income tax, can't decrease spending, and have a balanced budget in the state. They can't do any of these elementary things that they're there to do, but they pass 1,400 resolutions and, restrict the hemp industry.
Of course, if you want to use the drone, you probably have to get a license and pay a fee. So in other words, it's just another tax on the American public to interfere with the free market.
Yep, that seems to be the overall theme of this legislative session.
And
there was
FAA,
also.
I was going to say the FAA already has licensing and restrictions for drones of a certain size, and so these smaller drones really don't need to be legislated and so on, but it's just, like everybody's pointing out, just a money grab for the hobbyists.
Yeah. Well, and just like in Myrtle Beach, which I think it was Jordan Pace who said we technically have the highest sales tax now. We're above Charleston. I'll have to double check that. But when Myrtle Beach just about 10 years ago didn't have any sort of extensive city licensing. And now when I go to paid licenses, they charge me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for every single license that just I as a property manager have to get. And no one ever checks anything or does anything. It's just a tax. It's just a fee to do business in the city. And then when we did the Myrtle Beach moratorium thing, then they said I needed architectural designs and suspended my long-term license for anything in city limits. So they use it as a weapon and as a way to just get tax revenue. It's such a headache in this state. It's unbelievable.
You're exactly right. That is exactly what they do.
Do you see that message? It's at the 49 mark, but I just wanted to, I don't know if you can see about it. There's a storage issue. It might risk the upload.
Yeah, I think we only have an hour of recording.
Okay. I just did, just in case you wanted to cut this out. I can make it where we end it right at 60 minutes or 55 or whatever you need. Another bill I wanted to quickly go over, because there were a lot of hemp industry bills that were threatening to pass this entire year. And
That's what my gummies.
Yeah, they were coming after Steve's gummies real hard this year. So H3924 was one of them that passed. So it's hemp-derived intoxicants. It created, surprise, surprise, there seems to be a theme here, created extensive licensing and regulatory frameworks governing any form of hemp-derived product with significant new compliance requirements. So, again, part of the same theme. They have all this time and energy they're spending on everything, and they had to go after Steve's gummies.
Not very nice at all. And you know that the Institute for Justice ranks South Carolina a D for our civil asset forfeiture policy. So what did our state legislature do this session? They passed Bill H 4292, which we call legalizing auto theft by cop. It basically increases the ability for policemen to take your vehicles. If they suspect that the vehicle was used in a crime, they're going to confiscate your vehicle. So I imagine our civil asset forfeiture bill, our ranking will probably go from a D to an F. We're getting to be a welcome to South Carolina. I hope you enjoy the police state.
Well, in Cato ranked South Carolina as one of the 5 worst asset forfeiture states. So yeah, it's probably even worse than a D. So it's yeah, it's such a pleasant time going through all the whole session this year. I remember last year, wasn't last year the when they passed the Pornhub thing, where they started restricting porn sites and you have to give your license and scan your fingerprints.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for a friend. But yeah, you can't get on a porn site in South Carolina.
Yeah, Will was telling me about it. I don't do any stuff like that.
Not that I tried or anything.
But yeah, there was also a just a couple other bills finishing this out. There was H 4813, so they had a statewide magistrate court fee increase, raises filing fees, service fees, eviction fees, court costs, increasing financial barriers to accessing civil court and small claims court. If I don't know what it's like in other counties, but it's sort of a nightmare going through the eviction process in Horry County, and they definitely don't deserve any increases. Yeah, that's Tripp had to do a little interstate traveling. He didn't say why, but it might be related to Pornhub. We're not sure. That's why we're doing this remotely.
That and being able to get my CBD gummies.
Yeah,
I might have to travel more.
Steve's going north and Tripp's going south. It's a dangerous situation. But we're hitting about 55 minutes here. Joe, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or any specific bills or anything?
Not particularly. I just wanted to, all you were talking about the hemp-derived intoxicants bill. Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but rhinos. You have Republicans that say they're for limited government, blah, 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 and then they go to basically try to further restrict a market that doesn't need further restricting. You have the Republican nominee for the governor's race, Alan Wilson, saying that marijuana is the most dangerous drug. And it's just all like, this is completely divorced from reality. Like, what are we doing here? And, this bill, the hemp-derived intoxicants bill with the regulations, is just in keeping with that. Yeah. I'm surprised the total ban didn't pass, but I'm glad it didn't pass.
It was close. It had momentum to it. When my parents moved here from Montana way back in the 90s, they had blue laws in Horry County where you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday. There was no tattooing allowed. All these moralist laws, and it's amazing how the hemp industry has spread like a wildfire across the South where cannabis is still illegal. And it has to be close to half the states have legalized marijuana in one way or another. It's just like prohibition, where they passed the 18th Amendment and then it went so sideways. But before they even passed the 21st Amendment to repeal it, over half the states had just nullified the prohibition laws. It seems like this state might be the very last one to legitimately legalize any of that. It's already in DC. It's already in Florida, legalized marijuana to varying degrees. But when they're even terrorizing the hemp industry, that's not a good sign.
We need to push our right to legalize marijuana, to legalize all the hemp derivatives and stuff. If not for the fact that it's the truth, we need to do it to give our new governor migraines at night.
I didn't know we could somehow go backwards even further, but Alan Wilson, that'll be a Orwellian situation for anyone who does any form of drugs. That's for sure.
He will be having nightmares.
Well, and he was during Operation Ganja, which was named by him, or Ganjapreneur. He was going after hemp. And he stole millions of dollars. Ken Shimer had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of materials, packaging materials. They damaged the product, which goes through a very strict development process from the farm that grows it. And they go through like these 12 steps of how they treat it, how they process it, how they package it, how they test the THC levels in the hemp, et cetera, and they just ripped everything open and destroyed all of his product, took all of his machinery, froze all of his bank accounts, and not a good sign. Not a good look for old South Carolina.
Everybody knows that if you go around wearing a hemp T-shirt, it's going to make you want to rape and kill. I mean, it's just common knowledge.
We have South Carolina madness instead of reefer madness. But yeah, it was the further we go down these bills, the worse it gets. So I think we covered.
Yeah, we gotta invite Joseph to Microphone Monkeys so he can lighten up a little bit.
Oh, it would be so much fun. Are you free on Fridays at 10 a.m.?
I hate to say, unfortunately not. No, I deliver packages for FedEx, so I'm pretty much like 9 to 5.
Okay. Well, we'll have to set up a weekend show. We just had Bill, the conspiracy kid, on, and he can only do weekends too. So we'll have to have a Saturday special edition with the expanded monkey barrel. But I appreciate everything, guys, and jumping on the show. And I think we scraped enough of the surface. It just gets uglier from there. So we probably dipped our heads in far enough for this last session, and who knows what's going to come up in January when they start this all over again. But I guess we're coming up on an hour. I'll throw it back to you, Will.
All right. Well, that's been our first and premiere episode of LP legislative issues that we've had up here. It's a legislative update. Hopefully we'll have more in the future, and this is going to be the first in our podcast called Liberty Crack News and Special Information. Tune in for more Liberty Crack madness. Go to libertycrackmedia.com and check out our other podcasts. So I want to thank Joe Jernigan, Steve Hoffmann, and Brandy again for having a great and wonderful episode.